Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's refusal to acknowledge he should not have disclosed sensitive information about when the U.S. would attack sites in Yemen has angered American fighter pilots. The New York Times is reporting the news that senior officials in the Trump administration discussed plans on Signal for an impending attack angered and bewildered men and women who have taken to the air on behalf of the United States. Worse, they said, is that going forward, they can no longer be certain that the Pentagon is focused on their safety when they strap into their cockpits. One retired Navy F-14 pilot who flew combat missions from aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf told the paper this: ultimately, if you can't admit when you're wrong, you're going to kill somebody because your ego is too big. Another former Air Force fighter pilot added, when you disclose operational security, people can get killed. He said, these things are not taken lightly. I have never met anybody in the military who does not know this. And Joe, this underscores it so well, as we have this, frankly, double standard where the senior officials, cabinet members and the like, downplaying this, saying it's much ado about nothing. But those who are out there risking their lives day in and day out in the American military are saying this is a significant security breach. It's putting lives at stake.
So this is an instance where Donald Trump's political instincts, which have served him well for the better part of a decade.
He's back in the White House, well enough for that.
And pulled off probably two of the most improbable upsets in American political history, right? And he did that with a sort of no retreat, no surrender, no apology approach. This is just one of those times, though, rare times, though. It reminds me of what Potter Stewart said when, you know, he was asked about pornography. I know it when I see it. Mm-hmm. Well, Americans know an intel failure or an intel blunder when they see it. And even this sort of strong no retreat, no surrender approach, it appears to be running up against an immovable object, and polls showing that even 60% of Republicans are saying this is a big deal.
Yeah, look, there's a basic rule of politics that usually is true. Don't treat everybody like they're stupid and like they're complete morons out there. And right now, what we've seen, Jeffrey Goldberg obviously put out all the details, put details out on Monday. Then he put out the details that included the times, the weapons, specificity. It doesn't matter what it's called. The game of semantics is absurd here. Anybody could have read that piece and seen these are details that shouldn't be in a sensitive group chat. And anyone can read that. You don't have to be a military expert. You don't have to be an intel expert.
Jen, that's something you know because you were extraordinarily effective at your job. This is something nobody can spin.
Nobody can spin.
Nobody can spin this. We screwed up. We're sorry. We won't do it again.
Exactly. Now, the other piece of this that a number of people have made this point, but I think it's an important one, is that there's no way that small group Houthi PC was the only group chat on that Signal chat. So, because they were all so familiar, nobody raised their hand and objected to being on there. Nobody said we shouldn't have this conversation over here. Nobody said, let's do this over a call, which, by the way, every single person on that chain could have gone to a staffer and said, I need to have a classified call. I need to be in a classified space to have this conversation. So were there other calls and conversations about Russia, Iran, Israel? Probably. We don't know this, but my guess is yes. So when you see the anger from members of the military, from national security experts, from people who don't usually weigh in politically, from Peggy Noonan, despite I don't know that word either, that
it's a good word.
Now we all know it.
Kids, the word of the day, zhuzh. I think it means not serious, naive.
It has a nice flow to the word.
I do love it.
But my point is that there are unlikely people coming out and saying this is not acceptable and not okay, and you're treating us, everybody out there, like we're idiots and treating our national security secrets like they don't matter. And they do matter because they put people's lives at risk. In this case, and whatever other information was shared on the inevitable other conversations over other group chats.
So Congressman, you have experience here. You obviously served in uniform, and intel was actually what you did. Talk about your main concerns here.
How long do we have? No. There's a term that I can't say on national TV that I tweeted out right when I saw this, which is FUBAR. And you can Google that to see what that full acronym is.
Okay.
This has broken across, to Jonathan's point, broken across the American people because it's just so fundamentally insulting to them, to your points as well.
Right.
There's three really, really key points very quickly. One, this is unequivocally classified, sensitive information. They are trying to lie and deceive on that, but again, anyone, any pilot, any military person, had I done this, I would be stripped of my clearance, punished under UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, and probably in federal jail quite quickly.
Is there any question that would not have happened to you if
There's no
you'd done
question.
this?
Absolutely no question. And you've heard that across the country. I've had friends still in uniform texting me, oh my God, if I had done this, we all know what would have happened. The other piece here that I think is really important is, to Jen's point, this is the tip of what we think is a huge iceberg of lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and you see Hegseth doubling down, you see Waltz doubling down, you see even the president doubling down. And where on Capitol Hill, among my colleagues, other than Don Bacon, to his credit, where is the courage and the integrity of the House Republicans? The chair of the House Armed Services Committee has refused to even hold a hearing on this. Pam Bondi has said they won't investigate this. The American people have to demand that, and certainly I'm going to continue to push to demand that.
This goes to actually the structural changes that Trump has made in Washington since he took power again, right? From the beginning, he methodically stripped away sources of accountability. So that in a moment like this, there's nothing left. He fired all the inspectors general from all these different departments. He installed at the Justice Department and at the FBI partisan warriors he knew would be loyal to him and not go after him. He has Republicans in control of the House and Senate who have made very clear they're not going to do oversight in a real way. And that means that in a situation like this, where does it go next, right? Democrats have made mistakes with classified information in the past, with all respect, but there have been investigations.
Not me personally.
Not you personally. You would never do that. You would never do that. You would never do that, but you had to clean it up.
Yes.
Right? Obama, but the Obama administration investigated Hillary Clinton. Right? The FBI investigation on Hillary Clinton's emails began in a Democratic administration, despite the fact that they were both Democrats.
Well,
and the investigation of Joe Biden,
by the way,
classified documents in his house, also conducted by his own Justice Department. Now, both of them were off. Both of them, in this case, decided, okay, they weren't meaningful or they weren't intentional. We're not going to hold them accountable, put them in prison in Leavenworth or anything like that. But there was an investigation to decide that first, and you're not going to see that this time.
And by the way, in the first Trump administration, you also had two attorney generals who looked into Hillary Clinton and said there were not charges to bring just for any Republican.
But you have to investigate to figure out what the facts are in order to make that determination.
Well, exactly. I will say the one example, though, of a Republican who is stepping up saying we need an investigation. Roger Wicker, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee of the Senate, along with Jack Reed, his ranking minority leader, are stepping forward and saying this needs to be investigated.
Well, good for him. He's a pretty lonely voice, though, and I don't know if his voice is actually going to carry the day here. I mean, John Thune and or Mike Johnson have to decide that they're going to impanel some kind of committee to look into this. How likely is that? I don't know that that's very likely. If they do, it will be to exonerate them and say they didn't do anything wrong, probably. It'll probably be a setup from the start. As for the Pentagon IG, Inspector General, the Pentagon Inspector General was one of the 17 fired on January 24th. There's an interim in there now. He's not a Trump person from what I can see. He's been in the office of Inspector General at the Pentagon since 2015. Right. So he's probably a straight shooter, but who's to say Trump might not get rid of him and put his own IG in there now?
Which he knows, by the way, right? The point of firing the other people is that the people who come after them know what can happen.
Of course,
if they stray.
Then the last line of possible inquiry is, as you said, in the Justice Department. But Pam Bondi told us yesterday what she's going to do. She said this is no big deal, and her spin, as with so many of the Republicans' spin here, is to try and say this was a great success. They're trying to turn this relatively small military strike against a small country into like the second coming of D-Day.
Even the lawsuits that have been filed, demanding and requesting past Signal chats. Signal is an app that you can set to the information disappearing, right? So a lot of these could have already disappeared. People could have deleted them. That's the whole point of things being communicated through proper channels. So we may never know, which means there may never be a damage assessment by the intelligence community on the impact, which is, again, we don't know what we may not never know.
Will it be interesting to see on the federal judge telling them that they need to preserve the records? What comes of that? Peter, do you know the status of the IG's firing? I know that there was a district court judge.
The courts are looking at that. I don't know where the status is, but you're right. They challenged that because, in fact, they're saying the whole point of the IG is to be independent, right? There was a law that says, yes, the president can fire an IG, but they have to do it with cause and give 30 days notice, neither one of which Trump did.
Right.